Good people don't smoke marijuana.
I've known Larry for a long time.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 29th of September 2018. I'm your host, Larry Love. And we're here every week to bring you the latest information on the uses of medical cannabis and the fight for that and the fight for decriminalization and the fight for adult use cannabis. And this week, he's the campaign coordinator for Floridians for Freedom. We have Colby Wise. We're going to talk about the cannabis plant in Florida and his fight down there. But first, there was a lot of news this week. I guess the biggest news, as most of you know, is that the DEA caused a lot of confusion over the last few days, that's for sure. They descheduled only Epidiolex, which is the GW pharmaceutical tincture type product that is made in England and has been approved here. So they changed it to a Schedule 5. I'm going to play this clip and then I'll give you some reaction from some of the hemp experts here. Here's this report.
Breaking news here this morning, a big announcement from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency.
For the first time, a specific type of CBD oil is legal under federal law. Senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel is breaking this developing story out of Washington.
Many states have legalized CBD oil, but technically it remains a banned substance under federal law because it comes from a cannabis plant known as marijuana. 13 investigators learned later this morning the DEA will formally remove the banned designation for a new drug. Epidiolex was approved by the FDA this summer. That CBD oil has proven effective in treating seizures associated with two rare and severe forms of epilepsy. Before the product can be prescribed, the DEA has to determine how to classify it. Today, the DEA will announce Epidiolex is a Schedule 5 drug, meaning the government believes it represents one of the least dangerous, least harmful, and least addictive drugs on the market. Epidiolex contains only 0.1% THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. Now, it's important to point out, today's DEA announcement does not legalize or change the status of any other CBD product under federal law. And the DEA says other non-FDA approved CBD oils still fall within the definition of a Schedule 1 illegal substance. Now, right now, federal lawmakers are trying to change that. In the meantime, Indiana law says CBD oil with up to 0.3% THC is legal without a prescription. It could take several more months or even years to work out the differences between state and federal law. But advocates of CBD oil say the DEA's determination that Epidiolex poses very little risk or harm is a step in the right direction.
So this is for approved FDA CBD products. Now, Veronica Carpio, who's been on our show several times, she's an expert in hemp and a huge activist in hemp, and Richard Rose, who's been in the hemp industry for 30 years or more, they made some comments in regard to this because it is confusing. So first I'll read you Veronica Carpio's. Veronica says, it's pretty cut and dry. GW Pharma CBD drug was approved by the FDA as first cannabis botanical drug, with key ingredient being CBD from the marijuana plant. FDA and DEA take the same position that CBD is from the marijuana parts of plants, which are controlled substance under the Controlled Substance Act. The DEA rescheduled specifically the Epidiolex formulation, which is 0.1% THC, as a Schedule 5. So doctors can now prescribe and pharmacists can now dispense. CBD products from any other form other than FDA-approved only, the FDA-approved only Epidiolex currently, is legal. Okay, now, the Farm Bill, which is 0.3% THC, is only regarding cultivation, not final production for consumer use, unless it is from the exempted parts of the plants, the seeds and the stalks. She says they're two different things and not related. Now, Richard Rose comments, and this was posted on Facebook, both of these. Epidiolex is now a Schedule V. The lightest category doesn't include artisanal CBD products, only FDA-approved CBD meds. Since Congress never actually scheduled any natural cannabinoid, those artisanal products are less controlled now than Epidiolex. The calculus for listening to DEA is pretty simple. Whatever you did before, do that. If you are a licensee, then comply. If you aren't and have ignored them every day for years, continue to do that. And that was Richard Rose. But always check with your attorneys if you have any questions, for sure. All right, let's move on. We'll stay in the hemp industry. Here's a report coming out of Wisconsin. The first hemp harvest since the 1950s is about ready to be cut. Very exciting.
10 tonight, Wisconsin State Senator Patrick Testin took a tour of the first legal hemp harvest since the 1950s. Industrial hemp farming was once banned from the state of Wisconsin because of how closely it resembles marijuana. News Channel 7's Darrell Ballard tells us more.
Looks can be deceiving, and in this case, they are.
It's not marijuana.
What is seen on your screen may look a lot like marijuana, but in all actuality, it's industrial hemp.
It's like having two dogs. One is a German Shepherd and one is a Chihuahua. They're both canines, but they're absolutely different dogs.
Better known as the long-lost cousin of marijuana, many Wisconsin state legislators believe this plant now holds the secret for the next big thing when it comes to Wisconsin agriculture.
This is really beneficial for the entire state, particularly our ag industry. I think you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years, Wisconsin is going to once again be a national leader in this crop.
Back in 2017, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker signed a law legalizing cultivation of industrial hemp. After bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans, the first legal hemp harvest was born in Wittenberg, Wisconsin, to the parents of Michael and Deb Obernick.
It's marijuana's cousin, but it's not marijuana.
What was once banned from the state of Wisconsin because of how closely it resembles marijuana, farmers now say you can smoke acres of industrial hemp for days and will get nothing more than a really bad headache.
Within our pilot program, you have to pass a background check. You have to provide the GPS coordinates of the plant. We put in pretty stiff penalties if someone tries to, abuse this program and try and grow something that isn't other than industrial hemp. There's some significant penalties.
I was just looking for an alternative that, if it works and can make some money for a smaller farmer, so be it. But you got to try it.
Industrial hemp, which is often used for health foods and organic body care, does not contain the same chemical makeup that marijuana does. And in order to grow it, you still need a license issued from the state, which must be renewed each year.
On average, we import over $500 million per year of industrial hemp from places like Canada, China, and India. So this is a great opportunity to grow it right here in Wisconsin.
Reporting in Shawano County, Darrell Ballard, News Channel 7.
There's still wild hemp plants growing on the sides of roads in many rural counties and states and so forth. So this is very, very exciting, actually. All right, so also exciting, there's a race in Texas between Beto O'Rourke and our buddy Ted Cruz. And it's very exciting. Beto seems to be an amazing guy. Here are the two of them in a debate talking about drugs and cannabis.
So when he was on the El Paso City Council, he's one of the leading advocates in the country for legalizing marijuana. He wrote a book about that. Now, legalizing marijuana is actually a question on which I think reasonable minds can differ. I've always had a libertarian bent myself. I think it ought to be up to the states. I think Colorado can decide one way. I think Texas can decide another. But I'll tell you, Congressman O'Rourke didn't stop with marijuana. He introduced and he advocated for a resolution in the El Paso City Council calling for a national debate on legalizing all narcotics. That includes heroin and fentanyl and cocaine. And let me say, that is not, I believe, a reasonable issue on which people can disagree. Now, I suspect Congressman O'Rourke will say, we was just calling for a debate on it. Well, we're on a debate stage now. I will tell you, I think it would be a profound mistake to legalize all narcotics, and it would hurt the children of this country. That would be a serious mistake.
Senator, that's your time.
I agree with you.
Representative, please.
To be clear, I don't want to legalize heroin and cocaine and fentanyl. But what I do want to ensure is that where in this country, most states have decided that marijuana will be legal at some form, for medicinal purposes, for recreational purposes, or at a minimum will be decriminalized, that we don't have another veteran in this state prescribed an opioid because the doctor at the VA would rather prescribe medicinal marijuana but is prohibited by law from doing that. Another older woman with fibromyalgia who's not able to use medicinal cannabis because it's against the law here. And another African-American man, because more likely than not, that's who will be arrested for possession of marijuana, to rot behind bars instead of enjoying his freedom and the opportunity to contribute to the greatness of this country. Yes, I want to end the war on drugs and specifically want to end the prohibition on marijuana.
And that's certainly about freedom of what we put in our body. And cannabis certainly, as we know, is a great help for many, many people. We're going to go up the East Coast now and hear what's happening with legalization. In New Jersey, a legalization bill could be coming soon, and opponents aren't liking it.
How do you assess the prospects for getting a legal marijuana bill passed by the time this budget is passed? We're down to just a week plus now.
Well, it's not impossible, but I don't want to rush it when we're actually on the precipice of passage, I think. We're on a close to agreement with some important members of the legislature. We have a meeting with more stakeholders tomorrow to discuss passage of just adult use marijuana. We're also have close to agreement on an expansion of medical marijuana, which would help with that program. So. Whether it's going to be done in 9 days or it's going to take us to come back in a couple of weeks, that might be the best, more prudent course of action. I think we're going to be back here in a couple of weeks for dealing with some issues. So if it doesn't get done next week, I think we have a very good chance of getting it done soon.
There are two separate bills, if I understand correctly.
There is.
One that addresses recreational and medical, and another one that's medical only.
That's correct.
So do you think the medical only bill is going to move in the next few days?
We're going to try to make those bills move together, quite frankly. I think that's the most prudent course of action. If we move forward with a medical expansion bill only, I think you're going to see a lot of members maybe punt the opportunity to legalize adult use marijuana, and I don't want to see that. So through conversations with the Senate President, these bills should really move together.
Okay, so that's New Jersey. Now we go across to Delaware to Pennsylvania.
Of recreational marijuana in Pennsylvania is moving forward, and the push has roots here in Pittsburgh. Channel 11's Marlisa Goldsmith is live after learning how attitudes about the drug are really changing. Marlisa?
Yeah, use of recreational marijuana has been gaining traction in recent months. Now politicians and advocates in favor of it are hoping to convince conservatives.
Literally, it's groundbreaking.
Yesterday, State Representative Jake Wheatley introduced a bill that would legalize recreational cannabis in the state of Pennsylvania for adults over the age of 21. This comes 2 years after medical marijuana was signed into state law. If the bill is passed, a tax would be imposed that could generate hundreds of millions of dollars each year.
A new industry here in Pennsylvania that could easily generate recurring revenue of $600 million annually without having to add one single penny of new tax revenue.
Patrick Nightingale, the executive director of Pittsburgh's NORML, has been fighting for the rights of cannabis consumers, protecting them from criminal prosecution and conviction.
So I think it would make it safer for the consumers.
You get rid of a lot of this, illegal stuff, people being arrested for things that, minor things like that. Make it legal and you'll see a lot of it cut back.
In a conversation over the phone today, Representative Wheatley described to Channel 11 criminal reform being one of the most important parts of the legislation, saying cannabis has been used as a weapon, especially in communities of color.
Those who have been convicted of charges of the weight that we have or less, they'll automatically be released. Their records will be expunged. Their driver's licenses will be cleared.
All right, so here's what comes next. The Speaker will now send this off to a committee for a hearing before heading to the House floor. Now, if it doesn't make it to the House floor during this session, Representative Wheatley tells me it will be reintroduced early next session. Reporting live from Pittsburgh tonight, I'm Marlisa Goldsmith, Channel 11 News.
Okay, now that's Pennsylvania. Everybody's very excited about East Coast's becoming legal for adult use. Massachusetts has it, and I think Vermont. So it's covering the East. Now here's a mom. We're going to get back to CBD for a second. Here's a mom explaining how CBD has helped her son.
Components say it can help with everything from ADHD to muscle spasms.
In South Dakota, cannabidiol is illegal. Last week we introduced you to a Black Hills business. Police made him pull the oil from his shelves.
The state of South Dakota politicians shot their constituents in the foot on this issue.
Tonight we're learning the frustrations over CBD go beyond the hills. KELOLAND's Sarah McDonald joins us with a look at the law and why some say it needs to be changed. Sarah?
Brady, to give you some background, cannabidiol, or CBD, is found in cannabis and hemp. It doesn't make you high. The laws vary from state to state. In South Dakota, Governor Dennis Dugard signed legislation reclassifying the oil last year. CBD is on the list of Class 4 drugs. That means it's something you can get legally with doctor's prescription. There's a catch. South Dakota law also says it has to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Since the FDA hasn't approved it, it's technically illegal in South Dakota. Some people say CBD has changed their lives. I spoke with a mother who says it's helped her family and a Sioux Falls store owner who has quit selling the product. You'll no longer find it on the shelves of Blown Away Vape in Sioux Falls.
CBD was a really good sell in our business. We had a lot of people come in who had lots of pain problems. People that were taking opioids to control their pain switched to CBD because it isn't, you can't become addicted to it.
The store now carries different things, including essential oils and a botanical called kratom.
Carry other things that I think can help, but most people really miss the CBD they had in their life. Get calls at least twice a week now on CBD asking us why we don't carry it. We've had people come into the store and looking for it.
One mom says CBD has changed her child's life. Tiffany Tolke's 9-year-old son Nolan has ADHD.
Nobody would watch my son anymore. It got to the point where I couldn't take him anywhere because he was too much to handle.
Once putting her son on it, she noticed a difference.
I can bring him to coffee with me if I want, and he can sit and chat and make friends. You know, he couldn't make friends before.
CBD has helped her family, and she is upset that she can't buy it in South Dakota.
You're taking away my child's medicine. You're taking away my child's ability to learn, to have a good quality of life here.
Both Tolke and Williams Luther hope to see a change in the law.
Okay, that's South Dakota. And how exciting is it to hear a mom talk about the awakening of their child, so to speak? God, when you see some of these videos and so forth, it's just so heartwarming. Okay, now we're going to go to Las Vegas, Nevada, which I said many years ago was going to be the new Amsterdam. You know, not New Amsterdam, but the new Amsterdam. You know, where cafes and so forth would be. But before we get to the cafe part, cannabis-infused sodas are going on sale in Las Vegas, and it's happening now.
Would you drink a marijuana-infused soda? More and more companies are tapping into this market, and tonight a company is launching its first marijuana-infused drinks here in Las Vegas.
And 13 Action News reporter Nina Porshukula gives you a closer look at the invention.
The product launch for Keef Brand's cannabis-infused sodas happens to coincide with Life is Beautiful because this is their target market, people that are going to the concert tonight. They can't sell it here legally, though. You'll still have to get it from dispensaries. But I asked people out here today, what do they think about this growing market for cannabis-infused products? Would you try it, though?
Would I try it? Yeah, I would try it, definitely.
For me, personally, I think it's a ridiculous idea.
Since recreational pot was legalized, Las Vegas has been on the cutting edge of cannabis products. Today is no different. Starting this weekend, Keef Brand's marijuana-infused beverages will be available in select dispensaries.
It might be a good thing, but
I guess people have to try to find out.
Unlike edibles, where it takes over an hour to feel high, these drinks take about 10 to 15 minutes before you experience its full effect. Just a few weeks ago, we told you about a cannabis-infused beer. Las Vegas Relief Dispensary is the first one in the world to produce a drink like it.
I think they should just strictly stick to plants, is because you're trying to force a product on people.
That's really cool for everyone. I feel like, all right, they're making money off of it. People are being satisfied with it. You know, it's like, it's just another product going out there.
Now, if you're interested in finding out more on where and how you can find these cannabis-infused sodas, we have that information on our website, ktnv.com. Nina Porciuncula, 13, Action News.
So that's from Las Vegas, and if you're there, there's also, I understand, a cannabis museum in Vegas now. That sounds interesting. There's been a hemp museum in Amsterdam, as we mentioned Amsterdam a little bit ago, for 30 or 40 years. Anyway, so let's move over to Oklahoma before we take a break. We have a couple more things to play for you. One is about Amsterdam. But in Oklahoma, a cannabis cafe is opening on Campus Corner in the coming weeks. Here's this report.
Jim Castor, one of the owners of Cafe, says he wants this to be a place for students to come and relax and study in between and after classes. And most people say they're excited about it.
Sometimes if I have headaches or even like anxiety, if I don't want to take some pain reliever like an ibuprofen, I would just take some CBD and it would help a lot. And it's just like a natural way to help with that.
I think that's great. You know, I truly think it helps people with seizures, things like that. So I don't see an issue with it. I think it's good.
Neil Aurora says the location of Cafe on Campus Corner is also super convenient.
Having a cafe is an easy, accessible place, especially if you don't want to spend so much on a lot of the product. You can just get a couple things there.
Jim Castor says his vision for the cafe is to educate people on CBD oil, help them take the edge off, and give it to them in a way they'll enjoy.
Taking that oil and kind of infusing it and mixing it into things that you're going to take anyway, maybe even on a microdosing level, so where you have a little bit at a time rather than a big dose, then it helps get those therapeutic benefits into your body.
Yeah, I feel like that would help people a lot, and it would at least be something good for people to try and see if it would help them.
In Norman, Kelly Rolliard, Oklahoma's News 4.
So that's Cafe in Norman, Oklahoma. And by the way, I bought the name Canafe.com about 6 or 7 years ago because it's one of my dreams to open up a cannabis cafe. And I contacted these people. We'll have to see if they wanted to actually lease Canafe.com. We'll have to see what happens with that. Many of you know that I'm in the cannabis domain name industry. So that being said, where it all started with coffee shops and cafes, so to speak, in Amsterdam, I actually did my Mecca. I took my trip to Amsterdam when I was in France. I took a little train ride about 9 years ago. And when I came out of there, look, I really enjoyed myself. It's just so much fun to sit in a lounge type of atmosphere and share and smoke cannabis and so forth. But when I went home, I said, you know what? The dispensaries in California at that time in 2009 just blew away Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam is jealous of America's growing weed industry. Here's this report. From where? Amsterdam.
We are in Amsterdam. This is a city that's known for a lot of things, not least among them marijuana. Now, as the cannabis industry is growing in other parts of the world, we thought we could learn some lessons from the industry here.
There's a lot of things going on in this coffee shop. We have a really nice bar.
Joachim Helms is the co-owner of Greenhouse Coffee Shops in Amsterdam and chairman of the Dutch Cannabis Retailers Association.
We have this system in Holland where people can go to a coffee shop and buy their cannabis product in a good, nice, safe environment.
Thanks to a so-called toleration policy, it's been legal to sell and smoke marijuana and hash in coffee shops like Greenhouse in the Netherlands for decades.
So this is one strain that we have. It's a super lemon haze.
Yeah, that's really strong smell.
Yeah, we have a maximum of 500 grams in the coffee shop, and also the people are allowed to buy 5 grams per day per person, so which is enough for personal use.
And that's a small amount compared to in the United States, for example.
In the United States, it's a lot more, yes, definitely.
The Dutch government enforces strict conditions for coffee shops to stay in business, like the quantity of weed sold and the prohibition of alcohol and other hard drugs. But as marijuana legalization gains steam in countries like the US and Canada, the Netherlands is falling behind when it comes to regulating the weed industry. While it's legal to sell marijuana to customers in coffee shops, it's illegal for the shops to buy their supply of weed.
The politicians, they forgot to organize one aspect of it all, that's that we buy the weed in a normal way. So in Holland it's illegal to buy weed on a large scale, and it's illegal to produce cannabis also. In America, what you see is a little bit the opposite side. So what they have organized really well is the production of weed.
The Dutch government is planning a trial to experiment with legal production in the country. But that's just one of many regulatory hurdles in the Dutch cannabis industry. A law in 2014 forced coffee shops located within 250 meters of a school to close. That affected 1/3 of Amsterdam shops. Helm said marijuana legalization in Canada and states in the U.S. has started a conversation about how the Netherlands can cash in on the growing legal weed market, which is expected to reach more than $140 billion by 2025. He pointed to Canadian public cannabis companies now valued at billions of dollars. Do you think it could ever happen here, where there was a big publicly traded cannabis company?
I think it will be a while, but I think in the end it will happen worldwide. What you see now is that really big companies are being created producing cannabis. To walk around in those companies and facilities is for us really a dream come true, because it's growing weed in a 100% legal way.
So in modern times, they absolutely were the cutting edge of coffee shops and lounges and so forth. And I await that happening here so that we can socialize in a better way than looking over our shoulders. We'll be right back with Colby Wise, Floridians for Freedom, right after this.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio. The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio show.
And we're back. And online today from Florida, I've got Colby Wise. Colby is the campaign coordinator for Floridians for Freedom. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I'm just looking around your Facebook page, and I noticed something that was very interesting, so I wanted to ask you about that. This is a quote from you. Whether you're feeding the body or feeding your mind, all cannabis use is nutritional. Now, I've heard that all cannabis use is medicinal, so tell me how you came to this statement, which I find very, very good.
Well, here's the issue I have with the concept of medical. There's a lot of healthy people that can benefit from cannabis. So if we're to say it's strictly medical, it implies first you must be ill. The truth is it's nutritional. All the way back, from the beginning of time probably, we've had this in our diet on some capacity, whether in the late 1800s, I know we were feeding it to our livestock. So when the cattle and different livestock would eat the cannabis as their feed, it would put the nutrients and the cannabinoids into the system of the animal. Then we eat the meat. So cannabis has actually been part of our dietary supplement for who knows how long, maybe thousands of years.
So in your opinion, and I totally agree with you here, do you think cannabis is a vegetable?
I'm not sure. That might be a better question for somebody else. I don't think it's a vegetable. I think it's a nutritional food. Is an herb that, a spice or garlic, are those vegetables in regards when you're using them as spices? So I would find that question hard to answer.
Okay, I'm not too sure myself, but it just seems that it's really healthy to eat, raw cannabis leaves and juice them and so forth. Seems to be very good for people. It's just coming out over the last few years. So
correct.
So give me your opinion of what should be done with cannabis as far as scheduling is concerned and so forth. Yesterday, the United States government, the DEA, with the permission of the FDA, they did not legalize or lower the schedule on CBD. They only did for approved products, which is there's only one right now, which is the Epidiolex. So, how did you feel about that yesterday?
Yeah, all right. Two questions there. I'll answer the first one. What do I think, and my personal opinion, should happen? The federal government should 100% deschedule cannabis and mind their business and back away from the issue and leave it up to the states. To the second point of your question, what do I feel about it? I feel they should deschedule it completely. Anything less is further victimization. I don't know if you read in the article too, they're talking about $3,200 per dose of this Epidiolex.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're talking about a year's worth of Epidiolex would cost about $32,000 for the year.
Okay. So it's a year's worth for $32,000. I just think that's ridiculous for a plant that we could grow in our backyard and get the same benefits that manufactured pill would give us. We could grow the plant in our backyard and have a year's supply for a couple $100.
Absolutely. Well, I think some of the people in Colorado have said that they could get the same treatment with whole plant CBD and cannabinoids for like $2,400 a year, which is more like it. Okay, so that's a couple $100 a month. So we're all learning right now, Colby, as you must know. I mean, we're learning every day about stuff. So it's just going to take time. Prohibition, which is what you've been fighting against, has been around for 80 plus years. Cannabis used to be listed in the pharmacopoeia for its uses, and again, the same time that yesterday the DEA/FDA lowered Epidiolex to a Schedule V, they're still saying that there's no medicinal value to it, and it's still a Schedule I. And so this is, the 6630507 U.S. patent, has been saying that for years, and the U.S. government, House and Human Services, owns that patent. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here in the past, and we're caught up in it right now as well. So what do you think has to be done? You just mentioned states' rights. We should do this on state-by-state level. Veronica Carpio, who's a very big hemp activist in Colorado, had hemp classified as a food, which is exactly what you were that you were saying, that all cannabis use is nutritional. So that's the view of somebody, that all the states should try to classify cannabis as a food, to protect it, well, hemp anyway. So what do you think we need to do? It's a political issue, and we're fighting politicians that are denying science. So what is your game play for educating these people?
I just mentioned on the first level of it, as far as what needs to be done. What needs to be done is the federal government descheduling completely. Then when it falls to the states' rights, that gets a little more complicated, because within every state there's different procedures for law changes. Some states might wish to keep it within their own state-scheduled Controlled Substance Act. Okay, we believe if the state has the opportunity to amend their constitution, or the citizens of the state do, that they should pursue those elements of it. For us personally here in Florida, we do have only that right, and then of course lobbying lawmakers who are generally influenced by much bigger paying people than a bunch of cannabis advocates and activists. So in my opinion, the form that we have to make the correction here, the Constitutional Ballot Initiative, we felt that we need to address the issue properly as a human rights issue with our ballot initiative. That's what Floridians for Freedom is. It's a political committee formed for the sole purpose of establishing cannabis rights for adults to possess, cultivate, and use without fear of arrest. We do leave the regulation part of it up to the state itself for the sale and distribution. But again, I think it would be great if they started approaching this more as something similar to a food with maybe some age restrictions than they do, say, alcohol, which alcohol costs our society every day, financially and physically. Our societies are harmed because alcohol exists. And I would never tell somebody that, we have to outlaw alcohol. But to compare cannabis to alcohol, to tax and regulate it like alcohol is where I draw the line. I think it's sending the wrong message completely. Again, I believe this plant is more nutritional than it is intoxicating. Most people who use cannabis on a regular basis don't even technically get intoxicated the way somebody who might use it for the first time would be. So difference of opinions from what I share. I do agree that 100%, though, the nutritional element, the treating it like food, I think that's much more in line with what it truly is.
So you say that it's your opinion that cannabis should not be taxed and regulated like alcohol for adult consumption?
What I believe 100%, and the people also believe it. I've spent many, many years talking to people before we initiated our ballot initiative. The conversations I would have with people is, what do you think? If there were no rules and you could make the rules 100%, what would you think? And everybody kind of agreed to the same element. They believe they should be free to do what they want to their own body, whether good or bad. They feel that they should have the right to possess, cultivate, and use cannabis in the privacy of their own home and in private spaces without any fear of prosecution, and they don't want to legalize it in a fashion that allows the authorities to come onto your property, or due to cannabis. Unfortunately, with all the states so far, the tax and regulate approach, one, you're taxing people who have done nothing wrong. You're penalizing people who's not warranted, because by legalizing cannabis fully, what you're going to have is a savings in health care, you're going to have a savings in criminal justice, and you're going to have a overall betterness of your communities. Why do you need to tax that thing that can deliver that? Unlike with alcohol, I hate to go back to that, but it's warranted to tax alcohol because it helps to pay the extra burden of costs that's brought onto our communities due to it being legal.
Okay, but Colby, let me just interrupt, okay? 'Cause there's taxes on a lot of stuff. There's taxes on food, and not on some food, and there's hot and cold, there's differences and so forth. But as consumers, we pay taxes that go to help, certain areas of our lives. In our cities and so forth, we have state taxes and city taxes and so forth. Now, cannabis is a commodity. Okay, I've been using this plant nutritionally, as you say, for 50 years this summer. So there's a business involved in this, and when you buy and sell things, there's going to be taxes. Now, should it be overly taxed like some of the legalization states have, where there's 30 and 40% taxes here, and there's taxes on the distributor and all that? That needs to be sussed out. I mean, I've said this for years. We're all pioneers in this industry right now, trying to make it legal. So should there be tax on medicinal cannabis? No, absolutely not. Cannabis is a medicine. It's a real medicine, and should be treated that way. We don't pay taxes on our medicine when we go to CVS and Walgreens, so there should be no tax on medical cannabis. Now, there should be reasonable taxes, I think, on recreational cannabis. Now, I do feel that these two industries, as I've said on my show before, I know that you're new to me and my show, but I feel there should be a separation of the medical industry with cannabis and the recreational industry. They're two different industries with different needs. I managed a dispensary for 2 years, so I know that the people coming in there need certain help that a recreational dispensary probably don't have and can't do. So with me saying that, how do you feel about the separation of medical and adult use cannabis?
Oh, I'm 100% fine with the separation of it. I do believe that medical should have a more rigorous testing elements to it. I believe that there's, like you said, that there is elements to the medical that can deliver to the patients in better ways than a recreational dispensary, in my experiences, can. when I just want to be clear, though, when I'm saying I don't believe in the tax and regulate approach, there's two elements to that. The tax approach, I'm 100% fine with the commodity tax. In my county right now, it's 7%. I'm 100% fine with somebody buying a bag of weed and having that be taxed at the normal commodity sales tax rate. But when you start applying additional taxes beyond that, similar to the taxes that are applied to alcohol and tobacco, that is the part that I find burdensome. And, you know, in my opinion, I oppose it, but I'm told that I should be willing to compromise. So I have come up with a compromise suggestion. How about 1% added to the sales tax? Because in my opinion, that's much more of a reasonable thing to do. When you start going in, you know, especially double digits, but even 5, 10, you know, whatever percent tax above your standard sales tax, that's where I find it becomes further victimization of people who have already suffered far too long with arrest, property forfeiture, and the whole 9 yards.
And it's going to make criminals out of people if they overtax it, because people will just stay in the black market where they've been for all this time, where they're comfortable, and they're not paying taxes. And from what I'm hearing, the prices are getting lower in the black market. Go ahead, Colby.
See, and this is the second tier to what I was saying. It's two parts. The tax part we just covered. The regulate part. Now, this is why the regulated approach is not going to work for stifling or snuffing out the black market. Okay, if you don't give people who are already currently selling weed to their friends illegally a means to an end, a way that they can either pay a low permitting fee to carry on their behavior and pay taxes on it, like regular folks do, and file it with their taxes, the whole 9 yards, you're not going to end the black market. They're always going to be able to cut the prices of people who have to go through very stringent regulatory schemes. So, and then with all regulation, this is my biggest problem with it, it all equates to people still being arrested. In Colorado, they're still arresting people. Granted, the numbers are much lower, but they are still absolutely arresting people in every legal state for over-possession, overgrowing, and that's what we've got to stop. There should be no reasonable reason why anybody would believe that being arrested for a plant is a good thing. I just can't see it.
I agree. I totally agree, and I think that grow rights are part of legalization and decriminalization as well. Now, decriminalizing sounds like is what you're leaning towards. Am I putting words in your mouth, or is that the way that you would like to see it?
Well, I can tell you this. This is our ballot initiative. All people in the state of Florida 21 years of age and older shall have the right under state laws to possession, cultivation, and use. These rights shall not be infringed except for the transfer of cannabis by purchase or sale may be regulated as necessary to ensure health and safety. That is what we have put our money and our 2 cents and our views and opinions 100% behind. So anything away from that being the end goal is something that I have to question and really put some thought behind before I could answer.
Okay, so what's happening in Florida right now in regard to a possible legalization for adult use and also for making the medical program better? I know that you have a gubernatorial election coming up, and so tell me about the two candidates and how you feel each one would react to what's happening in Florida with cannabis medical and rec.
Well, currently in Florida, we have a very staunch prohibitionist governor with Rick Scott, even to the level that he's punishing the patients because they lost the lawsuit, so he feels the need to appeal it, even though he's on his way out. Simultaneously, they might be skirting other laws they could be enforcing that also deal with cannabis that are on the books, but they skirt those laws to punish the patients. So when it comes to the new candidates, I'm not too concerned to whether or not they personally are for or against cannabis as much as I am the bigger picture. I am generally a single, I guess, issue concerned voter, obviously with my views on cannabis, but at the same time, for the goodness of the people of the state, I want to take a more balanced approach. And there's other hot-button political issues that go on to that. So I would rather stay out of that discussion with our governors running, except to say that you have one candidate that openly says he believes fully in the tax and regulate approach and wants to use all the tax money to pay for whatever projects. We have another one who believes, and that's Mayor Gillum, and we have the other one who believes that, in his opinion, from his experiences in high school or college, all his friends that smoked weed didn't accomplish anything in life. So, but that's a step above the governor that we already have. So as far as either one of them threatening our efforts with a ballot initiative, I don't think that at this point the public opinion is on our side. Truthfully, the war on cannabis has already been lost. The prohibitionists have lost. At this point, we're in the negotiation phase, and it seems to me like a lot of advocates and others are almost allowing the losers of this fight to create their surrendering terms.
Yeah, no,
and that's what that's what I view the tax and regulate approach. It seems like all the politicians are jumping on that, the ones who will support, and it seems like it's just a payoff when technically the war is won. We have public opinion on our side. We're not going backwards. It's only going to grow stronger because the truth is the truth.
So the truth is, though, in Florida, that the people spoke and they wanted a medical program, and they wanted a medical program where they could actually smoke. And I believe that was passed legally, that you could smoke, but then I guess the current governor has put a stop to that. So what's happened with that fight?
It's not as clean as the amendment says you could smoke. What the amendment says is you can't constitutionally prevents anybody from ever being able to smoke their medicine out in public. Okay.
Well, every state has that. I mean, we can't. Here in New Mexico, we've had a program since passed in 2007, started really in 2009, and there's no smoking in public. I mean, that's just something that makes sense. I mean, I don't want to walk into people smoking cigarettes and smell that crap, and there's people that don't want to walk through a smoke for cannabis. So I understand that, and I think that's a smart thing to do.
Well, no, what I was trying to, one, is through not all places are doing those bans through constitutional means, okay? Secondly, the idea that our constitutional amendment didn't say you can smoke cannabis. It said that's what I was pointing out. It clearly states that you cannot smoke in public. And through that, the authors of the amendment argued that because it says you can't smoke in private, it implied that you could smoke in public, so it implied that you could smoke in private. And that's what that lawsuit is centered on, is that disparagement there. The state chose to say, well, that says you can't smoke anywhere, and obviously the Judge Grievers, a very, very, I think, forward-thinking judge in these two cases she's been handling, wrote a very good opinion stating why once you say you can't smoke in public, you can smoke in private. And the legislators chose to violate that constitutional right. So it's not as clean as it says it. The other cases, the same judge was ruled an opinion on, is for the right for a patient to grow, which in this particular instance, it's only for this particular patient, but he also went through the trouble of having a doctor write up what he needs to grow to keep himself healthy.
Right, that's the gentleman from the strip club, right?
Correct, Joe Redner, Mr. Joe Redner, someone who's been fighting the tyranny of government oppression in different ways. I grew up in this area, and he's been a staple in my life as one of the people who will fight against the oppression when it comes down to it. So, but his case is a little different because it will only benefit him specifically at the moment of the appeal going in his favor, and he bases his, which is rightful in all of our opinions, that when the authors of Amendment 2 wrote that it legalized everything, or a patient could have access to everything listed as the definition of what cannabis is. So when that happened, it says in there living or dead, or basically growing or otherwise, seeds thereof. So that tells the patients that they do have a right to grow. The state, again, chose to not view it in the same light and said, no, you don't have the right to grow. And with Joe Redner, if his case is succeeded, he will win the right outright to grow what he alleges he needs based on what the doctor wrote. More than likely, that would force our Department of Health to create rules for doctors to determine how much plants a patient might need in order to suffice their illness.
Right.
And then each person would then have an individual. One person might be growing 20 plants, another person might be allowed to grow 10 plants, and so forth.
Well, that would set precedent, and obviously Joe's suit will hopefully help the program move forward. So,
100%.
Yeah. So you travel around the state, gathering signatures and talking to people. Do you get much anti-talk? When you're sitting there and trying to talk to people and educate them, or are there people that come by and argue with you?
When I'm out collecting signatures, I've had the staunch. Usually they're elderly. Every now and then they're younger, but they'll come up and look you right in the eye, and they'll say some hateful things to you. I've been told that I'm destroying this country, that I want to kill people. Just the other day on Facebook, I had somebody saying that I'm hoping to kill multitudes of people with my legalization efforts. This is crazy talk, obviously, but that doesn't happen very often. Generally, we get a warm response. People want to sign the petitions. When I show them the petition and they read the simple language, the entire amendment's 119 words. When they read the entire amendment, sitting there, getting ready to sign it, they get a big happy look on their face, because many of the folks say this is the way we should be doing it. We approach it from the element of human rights. We 100% believe that all prohibition is a violation of human rights when it comes to this cannabis plant. And I say that because the same plant that is proven beyond a reasonable doubt to, at least in some cases, kill cancer cells, it makes logical sense to say that it could also prevent cancer cells from forming.
Right. Well, there certainly are people that have gone through using cannabis and gone into remission from cancer, using cannabis, and a maintenance dose after that is always recommended. So I think you're right about that.
Correct.
Who knows? We're learning things every day, and people are getting more acceptable to the fact that, maybe cannabis doesn't burn brain cells, and it actually rebuilds brain cells, because the science is starting to happen, and people are starting to embrace the science. That's what it's really all about. So, Colby Wise, you can be found on Facebook, Colby.
Yes, COLBYWISE. I've got a Patriot head on my little picture. Our group is Floridians for Freedom, also on Facebook. We don't do much on Instagram at this time. Our website is FloridiansForFreedom.com. The website isn't the best of websites, but we're in the process of improving that as we speak, in fact. And my email is myrightcannabis@gmail.com. And people can reach out to us at any time, and we're glad to help educate them, as well as welcome them to our team of volunteers.
Well, Colby Wise, I appreciate your passion for what you're doing. Florida is a tough state. I lived there from 1996 to 2005. I know what it's like. I know how hard it was to get cannabis down there. And it's like you and Roundtree and Stein and other people that are just, and others that I don't know, that are just out there fighting for the rights of people in Florida. And I thank you for that. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your time today. Safe travels. And we'll talk to you again soon. You can update us. We'll be right back after this.
Freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, alone, away from my home. Oh Lord, Lord, singing freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way from my home. Oh Lord, Lord, singing freedom, freedom, singing freedom, freedom, singing freedom, freedom, freedom. I got a telephone in my bosom, and I can call him up from my heart. I got a telephone in my bosom, and I can call him up from my heart. When I need my brother, I send brother. When I need my father, I send father. When I need my sister, sister. When I need my mother, I said mother. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid. Mother, mother, father, father, sister, sister, brother, brother, freedom, 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 freedom.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio. Radio. Show.
Well, I want to thank Colby Wise. Check him out on Facebook, Colby, C-O-L-B-Y, and then Wise, W-I-S-E. Thank you, Colby. I also want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials H.S. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be on the show, if you are a patient, an advocate, you have a product to sell, a story to tell, write me at info@mmjradio.com. Again, info@mmjradio.com. If you'd like to hear some of our old shows, you may do that at medicalmarijuanaradio.com, also mmjradio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88. On SoundCloud and Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. On CannabisTube.net, we have a channel. Also on Spreaker and iHeartRadio, you can hear us, I think, on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. I'm not real too sure about that anymore. On Now TV, channel 937, and soon, coming soon, theCannaChannel.com.
The medical marijuana.
Peace and love. And chaos where it needs to be.
Shalom.
Oh yeah, and fuck Trump.
Bapu puita, suya dapa, bapu didi, sapapu bapu bapu.